Live on WFLA Now. Feel good and live your best life with Bloom Health Club. Here's Gail Guayardo.
Today we're talking about money and love and how to balance love and money in your relationship. We are talking to a keynote speaker and the head of Power Women Investing, Tiana Ronstadt. Tiana, welcome to Bloom Health Club.
Thank you so much. It's so fun to be here.
So we've had Tiana on our globally syndicated health and wellness show, Bloom, many times, but I wanted to kind of get her into this venue for a more long-form conversation when it comes to money, because it's so much more complex than one might think. But first, I would like to introduce Brody Waddell, who is our digital reporter and producer of Bloom Tampa Bay. He's written several articles, and he always joins us on the conversation. So as usual, Brody, we will be tapping into you to get your opinion.
All right, I'm ready.
All right. So Tiana,
Got a lot to learn, I guess.
Yeah, we got a lot to learn. We just have to get the young guy's perspective of Brody, so we'll get in there. But let's just start about the psychology of money, because this is what you do when you work with clients and you hold workshops and you speak to large groups. You talk to them about understanding why it is that you have the relationship with money that you do. It starts with that.
It 100% starts with that. And I think that it's not just how did I grow up, that kind of 0 to 4, 0 to 5. We talk about how you learn a lot and you whatever you observe, however your lifestyle was. So those are things that you're going to bring forward. The second thing, though, that plays so much into it is your values. And what I find and what we start with is when I meet with couples is we first do a values exercise. What are your top 10 values? And then what are your top 5? And then what's your number 1? And if the two of you are trying to work together, you've got to understand where those values come from, because your habits are created because of your values. So that's going to lead us into those conversations.
And one of the things, and Tiana talked about this on Bloom, is that she is a big believer, and I am too, that there should be your money, my money, and our money.
Yes.
Because a lot of times people throw it all into one pile, and things can get really messy when that happens.
Absolutely. And especially if you're then trying to manage what we call, obviously, right? Today spend. What do we have to spend today? What do we need to save for kind of medium term? And then wait a minute, there's that long-term looming goal that we talk about, retirement. And it's like, if I am just looking at one giant pot for all of it, it's really hard. And so it's important that you always have a little carve out, if you will, kind of, I still like using that word mad money, almost okay, no one's going to question that. I'll never forget, I met with a couple and kind of kept coming back to the anger piece was, well, he always stops and gets whatever it is at 7-Eleven every morning. And I'm thinking, really, what difference does that make in the grand scheme? Okay, so that might be $4 or $5 a day. We can look at that in the cash flow, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, let's carve that out. That should just be his. Whatever that is, and whatever hers or theirs is, that is not what that's about. It's, we all work, we all bring something home, and then it's important to look at, okay, so what is our cash flow? What do we have to spend, right? What are our fixed costs? So we start with that. And then what's our slush? And with that slush, which isn't just extra money to do whatever we want, but what am I going to be able to say is mine, yours, and then what are we saving to ours? Does that make sense,
It makes
Gail?
a lot of sense.
And I always say, it's sometimes kind of simple, but when you're in the weeds and you're already in a mood about whatever, so-and-so didn't just unload the dishwasher today, and now they've stopped at 7-Eleven, and now you can see how you spiral in a relationship when I'm like, we just carved out some of the things that might cause additional stress, how you can really thrive then.
Yeah, I think, because my husband and I talk about like our next chapter in life and being empty nesters and, what retirement might look like, even though work is like a sport for me. I'm not quite sure I could ever stop. But I always worry about having this. There's not a lot of money in the me account that I have access to, but for whatever reason, psychologically, that money that he doesn't have the bank account, he does, because he's the bean counter. The guy is no longer a CPA by trade. He keeps his license, but he's very good with money and he likes to micromanage. And it's so annoying to me. And so I like this little bit of money that I don't have to explain why the girls and I went and got our nails done, you know, in 2 weeks instead of every 3 weeks, or, you know, little things like that. And I worry about what that looks like when I don't have the income coming in to funnel into this little tiny red card Wells Fargo account that I've had for decades. And so there's where the psychology comes into play.
You just like, it's like you summarized it perfectly. And for those that don't work, you know, and as a couple, you've made that decision, it's really important that they have money, regardless. Again, whoever has chosen to not work and stay home, or is staying home for all kinds of reasons, that person has to have some type of mad money that doesn't feel like, wait a minute, I'm a worker now in the relationship. That makes sense? Because it can become where if I'm constantly asking for something, that creates, again, how then does that go to having intimacy, having an actual relationship with this person that you fell in love with? Or I'm not getting paid to work at the house. Does that make sense too?
Right.
So we have to be cautious of how we manage that. But it is really important that both partners feel empowered in wherever the money comes, the cash flow comes from. Once it's in, it's ours, right? Like, meaning then we're going to look at how are we flowing the buckets.
Right.
And so I love that your partner is able to say, okay, I'm going to bean count Gail, which I love that, by the way. We all need one of those. And lots of us,
he's good at it.
Lots of us will pick a partner sometimes that's the same as us, which, you know, I always say there's good and bad, right? But most of us pick someone that has different. Well, that's what's going to cause this stress. So with that, he's going to help manage that medium and long-term plan, regardless of what the vision is yet. But he's empowering and you're empowered. And so moving forward, you want to say, what is the cash flow, this whole amount? What's the percentage I've been getting on the Wells Fargo red card? I want that percentage to continue, regardless of what I'm doing.
Right. Because again, and I'm not trash talking my husband. He's amazing
No,
with finances.
right,
He's so good. And when it comes time for a vacation, we've got the money. When it comes time for the roof repair, he's so this bean counting has led to a lot of tranquility when it comes to money in my life. But he is also the guy that I'm like, I'm going to go grab lunch with Ella. We have plenty in the refrigerator to make a salad.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want to make a salad. I just want to go to lunch with my daughter. You know, he's so pragmatic. Brody, do you have this in your relationship? I know you've been in kind of a long-term relationship for a hot minute now.
So nothing. I get more stressed out about money than almost anything when it comes to the relationship. You know what I mean? Like, especially I am a little bit more of like a saver, and she's a lot more of like a spender. You know what I mean? But there's also some like she makes tips, so like her money, she can either make a fabulous amount of money in the month or not very much at all. And so like even trying to get her to like sit down and do a budget is like incredibly difficult. You know what I'm saying? And that stresses me out because I like to know how the money's looking you know what I'm saying? Like I have to know, like I track every single dollar and try to have all of my expenses laid out for the month so I know when they're coming, and that gives me peace of mind. And it drives me nuts that she does not do that. You know, how do you bridge that gap?
It's an excellent question, and it's very common. And I think one of the things is help for, first of all, I would set a money date. And so I would definitely encourage the two of you to say, hey, we're actually going to have a date about this. And we're going to have a specific time and a specific amount of time. And then we're going to treat ourselves after. So you're going to plan something or do something, even if it's in your own home, that's a treat for the two of you. You're rewarding each other for taking this time to have a hard conversation. And in that, you're going to also manage the expectations of that. It's a how do I feel as opposed to how do you make me feel? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so you're just going to basically say exactly what you said, and also encourage and empower the fact that she has an opportunity to always make more, which is really a gift.
Yeah.
And so she probably didn't grow up thinking I'm going to put some to what my bills are some to savings, and some to giving. And so it's starting there and saying, and especially with cash, it's actually really great. So if I have $100, and there's all kinds of TikToks actually out there about this and all kinds of things. And I always say that it's interesting, Harold, they miss the giving bucket.
Mm-hmm.
The giving bucket is really important, and I'll mention that in a minute. But let's say of that $100, your fixed cost, which includes your cable, your cell phone, I'm talking bills that come in all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
That $100, if 60% is going to that, I only then have 40%. So I want 20% to savings and 20% to giving.
Mm-hmm.
And that savings is where you are a gift to her. And you can say, I want to help with that.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Gail's partner, I want to help with that. But in that 60%, we want to look at what are the actual expenses that we have to cover.
Yeah.
And I need you to be on my side because it gives me, meaning you, Brody, a lot of anxiety when I don't know that you even understand where the 60%, what we got to bring in.
Yeah.
And then the gift bucket is also to give back to yourself. You know, when we think about as we accumulate, for lack of a better way to say it, and those that are like right now, what we're dealing with, folks have fallen on really hard times. Mm-hmm. If we do not have the money in an account to give, then we ultimately are dipping and causing ourselves financial distress later. And I see lots of couples have this where one is a spender, so that means they also are a big giver. Mm-hmm. They're big givers. And all of a sudden they come home and go, but I gave that away. Oh, but we were saving for this. You can't really go back and say, we need that now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you always have a give bucket, in times where maybe your savings is for something you might have to give to yourself, meaning, oh my goodness, we got flooded. We actually have to give to ourselves.
Yes.
You are your most important first.
Yeah.
You have to figure that out and then give to others.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I want to dig a little bit deeper into the psychology of money because the episode with Tiana that's going to air on Bloom, our televised show, doesn't air till Wednesday, but we did kind of take a deep dive in the way we grew up. And I remember seeing money, it was the man, because it was generational. It was like generations ago. It was the man that had the money, and the man almost used the money as control, and the man was always the boss. And I did see my mom, very entrepreneurial. You knew my mom. Tiana, she was making her money. It might not have been a lot, but for back in the day, like it was very forward thinking of her. And so now with 4 daughters, I am obsessed with saving money for them so that they never have to be answering to any man. And it sounds crazy, but it is my all-time obsession. It's why, I work as hard as I do and I stay in the game. It's because my whole life is about making sure that these girls are taken care of. And when you look in the future of today's youth, I mean, would you say they can get out there and make it on their own, or do you see all these financial hurdles that they face as young adults?
I always feel like that I want to say that all of a sudden we've mastered this and we just haven't. Even though, the new, all the new statistics, females are, control more than 50% of the wealth now. And we say all of this. My question is, where's the decisions being made, though? And to your point, Gail, the reason I'm in financial planning is because, as Gail knows, I lost my father when I was a senior year in high school right here in Tampa, Florida. And he had his own business. He was entrepreneurial. My mother knew nothing. And he didn't have a will. So he died intestate, which means that you die based on the will of the state. And in 1984, the will of the state stated 50% went to my mom and 50% went to the children. And I was 18. So I ended up with 25% of a mess, to be quite honest. And instead, I just wanted to go to college. And so looking back, I was like, I don't ever want a family, a person, a woman. I don't ever want that. And my mom worked. And my mom, I mean, she was a rock star. She is a rock star. Shout out to you, Mom. And with that, though, it's still, if you don't plan, but more importantly, Gail, we should have been raised with that, you know?
Right.
And so I believe that what we're finding is that when you have that first job, you know, it's how are you actually educating yourself on what are you actually going to withhold for paycheck? How are you going to save for something? And I always encourage folks, go to simple. Again, we're going to go back. Everyone has set a goal for something. All you are doing is setting financial goals. And so we want to first set a goal that is very attainable, right? So I need to make X amount to have the lifestyle I want. And what am I coming in with? Do I have student loans? Do I already have a car? Do I already have a rent payment? What am I coming in with? So what do I actually have to make, right? That makes sense, right? To clear. But then what do I need to make to save for an attainable goal? And those are your SMART goals. Specific, measurable, attainable, right? We know those SMART goals. We all were raised with that. So I always tell folks that it's getting out of the way of that money is like, scary and intimidating. It's just a goal. And as women, we're really good at setting goals and we're really good at attaining them. And so let's start thinking like that. And what are goals? I want to go to the Taylor Swift concert. I mean, I'm thinking of what are some goals that you want to try and achieve, and then looking at what the attainable is, because then I can do the numbers.
That's interesting. I do want to circle back and say that, going back to losing your dad at such a young age, I will say that your mom, who might not have known a lot about finances back in the day, I mean, the three of you, your mom, your sister Carmen, and you, have just evolved into these tremendous success stories. And it's something that I've always sat back in awe of what a brilliant job your mom did with you two girls, and how you thrive today. And I know how your dad must be so incredibly proud to look down and see what these three women have done together and how you've risen to the top. It really is beautiful. And I think, as hard as that phase of your life must have been, the lessons that you learned along the way to become the women that you are today were really tremendous. And a lot of times we learn our lessons through hardships.
Absolutely, Gail.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, I am, I miss him, of course. I cannot believe the trajectory of my life, right? Because of that. And I also will say that, yes, the biggest gift our mother gave us was we know, but we've got to just move on. We have to recognize the emotions. We have to understand what we're going through. And, it wasn't like a void thing, but it is that we do need to move on. And we have to evaluate where we are, and can we stay in the house? Can you go to college? Like, tough questions. And setting some of those realistic goals was actually really healthy right back then. And then you want to go one step further, and then you want to set a stretch goal, right? So when you think about a relationship, and that is how you stretch someone from being a spender to helping them be a saver.
Right.
Because a spender can set very attainable short-term goals, but it's hard for them to set stretch goals, like a vacation, like retirement. Make sense?
Yeah.
And so I definitely learned all of that from my mom. And she's a
brilliant
rock star.
job. She did a brilliant job.
Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Gail.
yeah.
Thank you.
So Brody, any other from your perspective? Because we kind of touched just a wee bit on my obsession with stashing away money for my daughters, just because I feel like the world seems a little bit more difficult at the upstart today.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think a lot of times couples almost have to get together out of convenience. So expensive out there these days.
To be alone.
And then you get stuck. It takes two people to come full circle, where it used to be you had to couple up to survive. And then there was a little bit, maybe a couple decades where it was fine, like where Gail's talking. And then now we're right back around to where it's like, okay, this is like for survival. We need each other again.
Think that's true?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. It's very expensive to be on your own.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, and so, and especially when we look at aging, right? And then we look at the decrease in the number of people wanting to even have children. And I mean, it is becoming
primarily financial.
And it's financial. And so it used to be a luxury for two people to work, right, Brody?
Yeah.
And now it's like, if two people don't work, I mean, how do we actually survive?
Yeah. Because my daughter's like, mom, pets are the new kids and plants are the new pets.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to take on the financial burden. I mean, it's expensive. I was listening to one report and it even sounded like this is shy of what it should be, but like $11,000 a year of your salary goes directly to childcare. That's before you buy the first formula, diaper, onesie.
Yeah.
It's expensive. It's and things are inflated, and it's a tough time. But it all comes back to what you're saying, Tiana, that you've really focused your mission and your career on is helping people draw it back to the basics. And I love how you break it down in a way where it makes sense and it keeps everybody in a good headspace about how money is spent.
Yeah, I want to go back just for the money date and just talk a little bit. So the cash flow piece is first, right? And I'm just going to say out loud, budget is my most unfavorite word besides diet. So they are not part of my vocabulary.
Yeah.
Cash flow is really king. And I find that again, depending upon how you were raised, budget is a really bad word because depending upon the arguments, the stress in the house, that can really just feed in. And then you're bringing that into the relationship. You're like, oh, well, this is going to be awful. So when we look at that, cash flow is really the secret sauce. And when we talk about cash flow, we're looking at what is the net amount I'm bringing into the house. So new couples, I find that no one actually looks at the gross paycheck as a couple.
Yeah.
They go, oh, well, this is what I make. Well, this is the net amount. Well, did you actually sit down and look at what the gross amount is? And wait, you're both taking out for this insurance and this extra, savings and this Christmas fund, whatever. All these things come out of your paycheck. You actually want to sit down and talk about that. Because if all of a sudden this person's already saving 10% in their paycheck and they didn't tell you and you didn't know, it's not like they were trying to deceive you. They just kind of forgot.
Right.
They did that during their benefits and they didn't realize this should be part of the money conversation. So we start with gross to just have a conversation around the paycheck, and then net is your cash flow. Then what are those fixed costs? And if fixed costs, that's when also subscriptions come in. All the things that just gobble away at our money. Then that slush, that's what I call that, which you're like, slush, Tiana, that's just going out to eat. That's, me wanting to go get a salad with my girlfriend, whatever. I mean, so that slush amount, wait a minute, savings has to come in there, right? And so that's where the conversation needs to be around that slush. The second piece you want to do at your money date is your net worth statement. And when we talk about net worth, we're simply talking about it as a couple. You're not talking about it in like you're trying to go get a big mortgage or something or a loan. Yeah. You're simply saying, what is all the things that we own? So I want everything on there. If, you buy purses and that's your thing, I mean, right now that's a big thing, or you collect baseball cards. Yeah. I need to see that on your net worth statement because this is just yours. But it's also as a planner telling me what you spend money on. Right?
Interesting, yeah.
So everything needs to be on that net worth statement. And so every single thing, and give it a value. So way back when we were, I was thinking about our parents, it'd be like their silver collection, right? Their China collection, their art. And maybe you're an art collector. I want to see that. Maybe you're a car collector. I want to see that. Yeah. And so then it's your debts, right? And those are your big debts, right? So student loans, I own my car, but I don't own my car. I always get the question about leases. Leases is going to be on the cash flow statement. It's not even going to be on the net worth, right?
Yeah.
So then I just want on your birthday and your anniversary, so that means you're having a money date 3 times a year, I want that net worth statement going up. That's it.
Yeah.
That's
I like
it.
that. That's just 3 days. That's just 3 days out of the year. You
3
can
days.
do that.
That's it.
Your
Take
birthday,
it.
3 days.
anniversary.
Not bad.
What's the other one?
Yeah.
Each other's birthday.
And
Yep.
anniversary.
Yeah.
All right. I got an anniversary coming
Yeah.
up. The big 2-0, December
wow.
4th.
Ooh,
My
I love
goodness.
it. So set a money date.
I am
Yeah.
going to set a money day. Money talks.
We'll be following up, right, Brody?
Yeah, that's right. Tell us how it went.
All right, Tiana, how do people find you? How do we find this incredible wisdom about our finances?
So you can find us on website, Instagram, as well as Facebook, Power Women Investing.
Awesome. Thank you for all the advice. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Until next time.